Despite all the focus we've placed on the next generation of fighter jets currently in the works or on hold for the U.S. Air Force and U.S. Navy, it's increasingly certain that the vast majority of the real fighting in the sky will soon be left up to a new slew of artificial intelligence-powered drone fighters, taking their cues from nearby stealth jets. These low observable drone fighters, we've long understood, will extend the sensor reach of crewed fighters, flying out ahead to identify threats and targets, engaging them on behalf of that pilot or relaying the target data to other drones in the same kill web. These drones will engage airborne targets with a new generation of air-to-air missiles, confuse enemy air defenses with advanced new electronic warfare suites, and make it possible for a single pilot to attack targets from multiple angles at once, creating such a significant advantage that it's genuinely tough to overstate just what a big deal these aircraft could be. But new developments in America's effort to field these drones, known within the Air Force as collaborative combat aircraft, now point toward an even more dramatic shift in the future of air warfare. Ongoing testing has confirmed that the autonomous systems needed to allow these drones to function effectively in complex combat environments may not need to be as advanced or as robust as previously thought, allowing for lower costs across the board in terms of both development and production. But easily the most incredible realization to come out of testing to date has to do with the pilot-drone interface, with previous Air Force assessments built around the idea of giving each fighter a pair of drone wingmen, fearing any more than that would be an overwhelming mental burden. But recent tests have shown that the cognitive load required to manage a pilot's drone wingman is a lot lower than expected. In fact, according to Lockheed Martin, you could already marry each F-35 up to as many as 8 AI-enabled drones. And while we talk a lot about the technologies that could shift the direction of air warfare in the years ahead, this development could represent much more than a shift. We're talking about a total air power revolution. I'm Alex Hollings, and this is Air Power. The U.S. Navy just released new images of them testing their Helios directed energy weapon, or laser, aboard the USS Pebble, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer. During this test, the Pebble took down an airborne drone using the Helios laser, marking another big step toward making lasers a truly viable approach to taking down at least some types of threats. Now, we've discussed the immense challenges associated with using lasers for air defense in our video about that topic, but there are also some really big upsides. Things like an extremely low cost per intercept, and the fact that you just don't run out of ammo as long as you're still producing electrical power. And I've been staying on top of this and similar laser programs thanks to Ground News. Ground News is an aggregator that collects articles published by news outlets all around the world, and then places them all into a single easy-to-read feed, making it simpler than ever to not just stay on top of what's going on in the world, but also to peer through the veil of bias that's so common in today's news. Right here on Ground News, I can see that 49 outlets have covered this story so far, and you can really see an imbalance in coverage between left and right-leaning outlets, with 13 right-leaning outlets covering the story, but only 2 left-leaning ones. Now, those left-leaning outlets really emphasize the dramatic images released by the Navy, running headlines like, "Image captures U.S. Navy testing its new laser weapon. What to know about Helios." Whereas many right-leaning outlets are really playing up the capability of this admittedly somewhat low-powered laser, with headlines like, "U.S. Navy unleashes terrifying new missile-melting laser," and huge warning to Putin. Now, Ground News also shows you vital information about each outlet along with the headlines, like their political bias, factuality rating, corporate ownership, or government affiliations. And I love the Ground News blind spot feature that shows me stories like this one, that are getting lots of attention in one political sphere and are basically being ignored by the other, and helps me make sure I'm keeping my media intake balanced. Ground news is a big part of my research and my day-to-day news consumption, and it can be for you too. In fact, I can get you a great deal. Just go to ground.news/sandboxx with 2 X's, or just follow that link in the description below to get 40% off the same Vantage plan that I use every day. Again, that's ground.news/sandboxx with 2 X's to get 40% off their Vantage plan that'll help you stay on top of things. Back in 2014, the U.S. Air Force commissioned a classified study into the technologies and capabilities that would be required to maintain America's air dominance edge in the decades ahead. A study that, as we've discussed in the past, directly led to a subsequent and also classified billion-dollar X-plane program that proved so successful it became the basis for both Air Force and Navy 6th-generation fighter programs. But right from the start, this study and the NGAD program that followed were never about this new crewed fighter alone, and the Next Generation Air Dominance, or NGAD program, has always been billed as a family of systems. Aside from new crewed fighters, this family would also include collaborative combat aircraft and a slew of new long-range weapons meant to offset any potential advantage presented by recently fielded adversary air-to-air missiles like China's PL-15, all connected to one another via newly emerging battlespace networks that will turn long-standing kill chains into modern kill webs. This means distributing the 6 steps of the long-standing kill chain: find, fix, track, target, engage, and assess throughout a self-healing mesh network of battlefield assets that can each use their onboard sensors and other capabilities to complete or augment each step and ensure resiliency across the board. While adversaries could once interrupt a step of the kill chain and effectively end an engagement, modern kill webs will simply redistribute roles to other nearby assets as platforms are lost in the fight, making it all but impossible to stop the heavy kinetic hand of American military might from finding its target once the decision to execute's been made. And while the crewed aircraft and new missiles are both vital to this effort, it's not hard to make the case that the CCA drones are actually the cornerstone of this new approach to warfare. Not only will these platforms be tasked with doing the majority of the fighting in the sky, and soon in air-to-ground operations as well, but they'll also serve as vital nodes in that kill web, using their own onboard sensors to extend the notional reach of command and control further than ever before, providing pilots with more situational awareness and combat capacity than has ever been possible, and overwhelming adversary air defenses through a combination of technology and sheer volume. Something that's really only possible thanks to a relatively low cost and no need for highly skilled pilots in the cockpit. In 2024, then-serving Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall outlined the branch's plan to field 1,000 CCA drones in the coming years, allocating 2 each to some 300 Block 4 F-35s and another 200 NGAD fighters once they enter service. This figure was all but certainly based on a combination of cost projections for the advanced autonomy required in each drone and, just as importantly, the added cognitive load on pilots tasked with operating drone fleets in combat alongside, flying their jets. But 2 recent breakthroughs in the CCA effort now suggest those calculations may have been way off, and in fact, it's now starting to look like these CCA drones may not need nearly as much autonomy as first envisioned, allowing for lower costs. And again, just as importantly, the brainpower burden of commanding these drones is proving to be a lot lower than we thought. In fact, according to Lockheed Martin CEO Tim Jakelet on a January 28th earnings call, the firm has already successfully demonstrated a single F-35 pilot operating as many as 8 CCA drones at once without it becoming too big of a job. Now, this claim coincided with a Lockheed Martin press release that didn't offer the same sort of granular detail, but did highlight a recent demonstration of F-35 systems and CCA teaming that included, quote, the seamless integration of AI technologies to control a drone in flight, utilizing the same hardware and software architectures built for future F-35 flight testing. Now, that same release also mentioned similar live flight tests conducted by their Skunk Works in coordination with the University of Iowa's Operator Performance Laboratory, showing how existing aircraft can be paired with autonomous flight systems for complex air-to-air missions. And then there's the Air Force Research Lab's pretty incredible success with the ongoing Skyborg program, which is the effort that's actually developing and maturing the artificial intelligence agents, as they're called, for their new fighter pilot duties. This effort, which has direct ties to DARPA's Alpha Dogfight trials that pitted human pilots against AI adversaries in virtual dogfights a few years ago, has already produced AI agents capable of squaring off against seasoned fighter pilots in complex air-to-air fights. In fact, the aforementioned Frank Kendall, a 75-year-old man with no fighter pilot experience, even rode in the cockpit of the branch's heavily modified testbed F-16, known as the X-62 Vista, in just such an exercise last May. As we speak, these AI agents are being integrated into a half-dozen combat-coded F-16s out of Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, in yet another AI-focused effort dubbed Project Venom, short for Viper Experimentation and Next-Gen Operations Model. These F-16s, which are equipped with a full suite of advanced onboard sensors for a variety of combat operations, will fly a variety of air combat exercises with human pilots at the stick, leaving the AI agents on board to learn from real human operators, collecting flight experience and vital data they can use for subsequent simulation training. These programs will eventually not only power the Air Force's CCA drones, but will also add advanced autonomy to crewed fighters as well, serving as a sort of advanced autopilot, or maybe even an AI co-pilot that can handle standard flight operations while the pilot focuses on managing the battlefield, or it may respond to inbound threats the very instant they're detected by sensors. But these new dogfighting AIs will need their own aircraft to really maximize the potential of this technology. And, in fact, the Air Force has already awarded Increment 1 contracts to 2 drone manufacturers to produce these aircraft, with limited serial production expected to begin as soon as next year. These companies, General Atomics and Anduril, managed to beat out industry juggernauts like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman for the right to field America's first drone fighters. But the exact performance characteristics and combat capabilities of the aircraft they're building remain mostly hidden behind a veil of official secrecy. And there are, of course, seemingly countless other drone platforms competing for a chance to serve in some aspect of the loyal wingman role, with the Air Force intending to award Increment 2 contracts for drones with different areas of focus sometime this fiscal year. And of course, production contracts could feasibly still be up for grabs if a deep-pocketed firm funds its own research and development and comes knocking with a superior platform at contract award time. Many of these other drones, like Kratos' XQ-58A Valkyrie, have seen DoD development dollars funneled their way via several other programs, like the Low-Cost Attritable Strike Demonstrator Project and the Low-Cost Attritable Aircraft Technologies Initiative. This collection of alphabet soup programs and the subsequent alphabet soup of platforms that they've produced or tested has really made staying on top of the whole CCA effort as a whole pretty challenging at times. And as an aside, this is also why I'm not really all that worried about video clips surfacing of China's new stealth aircraft in testing. As near as I can tell, the US has around a dozen stealth aircraft, crewed and uncrewed, in publicly disclosed testing as we speak. Many of them have never been photographed or recorded in flight, but that just emphasizes a point I've made in a previous video, which is there's an important difference between being the first to have your new aircraft posted online and being the first to actually build them. But let's get back to the drones, because while details remain scant, statements made by Air Force officials like General David Alvin suggest the branch intends to buy between 100 and 150 Increment 1 drones, but it isn't clear whether one platform will be selected or not. What we do know, at least vaguely, is that the Increment 1 CCA drones are expected to serve primarily as missile trucks, powered by air-breathing jet engines in the 3,000 to 8,000 pound thrust class, roughly comparable to the J-85 turbojets you can find powering small tactical aircraft today like the Northrop F-5 or the similar T-38 Talon. This also speaks to one significant area of emphasis for these drone fighters, which is keeping costs down. While it would certainly be possible to build a drone that offers the same types of onboard sensor-fusing avionics and incredibly powerful targeting capabilities that you find in today's F-35, doing so could see per-platform costs exceed the feasible threshold. So, while companies are working to mature the airframe designs, there are seemingly countless other parallel efforts, all aimed at producing smaller, lower-cost, high-capability sensor suites and more, all to equip these missile trucks. And even as Air Force investment into the concept continues to climb, managing that balance is still a top priority for those tasked with building these drones. I'll quote Air Force Colonel Timothy Hilfrich now. "If we're able to continue to add capability and gold plate things, we're going to miss out on our costs and, most importantly, our schedule targets. And so, making some of those tough trades to say, this is good enough, and moving on has been a challenge because we want a lot, but we are making those decisions." Now, General Atomics, we've come to learn, has based their CCA prototype on their XQ-67A off-board sensing station drone, which made its first flight last February as a part of the Air Force Research Lab's low-cost attritable aircraft platform sharing program. In fact, according to General Atomics, they used that XQ-67 as their prototype for the CCA competition before being awarded a contract to build what they call production representative flight test articles of the armed CCA variant. Now, as Michael Atwood, Vice President of Advanced Programs for General Atomics, explains, their CCA drone does remain very similar to the XQ-67, but is different, describing one as a sensor station and the other as an airborne weapon station. According to Aviation Week's Brian Everstein, the CCA version of the aircraft looks very similar, but has a slight change to the wing slope, representing the most visible difference. Now, renders of the General Atomics CCA, like the XQ-67 it's based on, show a low observable design with a dorsally mounted air intake that would limit radar detection from below, a stealthy V-shaped tail, and a common stealth element of a pronounced chine around the fuselage of the aircraft. The render also appears to show a protruding window that, in advanced fighters like the F-35 anyway, houses infrared electro-optical targeting sensors, and, as the Warzone has pointed out, that could point toward the potential inclusion of infrared search and track targeting capabilities that would be vital for engaging stealth aircraft like China's J-20 and J-35, among others. General Atomics has reportedly also made big strides in their approach to using common core flight system components across multiple platforms to drive down development, production, and sustainment costs. These core systems include tricycle landing gear, flight control computers, and mission systems, effectively allowing you to field a variety of platforms with different stealth, flight, or performance characteristics for different mission sets without having to fund top-to-bottom development for each one. And to that point, General Atomics has already begun marketing their Gambit series of drones meant to do exactly that. Now, according to Air Force officials, this shared core approach is being ingested into the broader CCA effort as a universal means of keeping costs down. The other drone to be selected for Increment 1 of the CCA effort, Anduril's Fury, is arguably even more enigmatic. The aircraft itself, to some extent, has been under development since the late 2010s, when it was presented to the Air Force by the design's originator, Blue Force Technologies, as a fighter-like drone that could serve in red air roles, or could stand in as enemy aircraft in air combat exercises. At that time, this jet was known as the Grackle. Now, in 2023, Anduril, a fairly new company that's made big inroads with the Defense Department in recent years, thanks to its focus on advanced autonomy for drone systems, purchased Blue Force Technologies and took over the company's 2 facilities and 90 or so employees, making Grackle an Anduril product and incorporating their advanced autonomous flight systems into the platform, effectively turning a drone that was meant to simulate combat into a fully functional warfighter that today we all know as Fury. Now, this aircraft also boasts a broadly low observable design that in some ways looks more like a traditional fighter, including an air intake mounted on the underside of the fuselage and a conventional standing vertical tail. Now, previous media reports suggest the aircraft is less than half the length of an F-35 at about 20 feet, with a 17-foot wingspan and a maximum takeoff weight of around 5,000 pounds, meaning depending on the output of the jet engines selected for this aircraft, it could offer a 1-to-1 thrust-to-weight ratio or better. As former F-22 pilot Andrew Van Timmerman, who now serves as the Director of Air Dominance Systems for Anduril, put it, the aircraft was designed to offer similar performance capabilities to modern 5th-generation fighter aircraft, with the notable exception of sustaining supersonic speeds, which would require a higher-performing engine. Instead, Fury, like all of the CCA drones announced to date, will be limited to high subsonic speeds just shy of the sound barrier. Now, that might sound bad, but realistically speaking, today's stealth fighters don't spend a lot of time flying at supersonic speeds. It's not good for fuel efficiency, and it can even damage their delicate radar-absorbent skin. Now, like General Atomics, Anduril has emphasized modularity in their Fury proposal, making it fairly simple to swap out capabilities and mission systems depending on the need, and likely adopting a similar shared core approach in future iterations. These drones, along with a growing list of others, including Boeing's MQ-28 Ghostbat, Northrop Grumman's Model 437 Vanguard, Kratos' XQ-58 Valkyrie, all of which are already conducting flight tests, and as yet undisclosed, but nonetheless in development offerings from Lockheed Martin and others, will all continue to mature and change in the years ahead as they vie for follow-on increment contracts and eventually a full-rate serial production contract that will likely run in the hundreds, if not thousands, of airframes. Now, some variants will operate from runways like conventional fighters, while others are already experimenting with runway-agnostic launch capabilities, using rockets, making it possible to launch a fighter's drone wingmen from more places and from more directions than possible with conventional aircraft. And as these contracts are awarded and production begins, it'll then fall to the Air Force's Experimental Operations Unit to figure out how exactly to most effectively leverage them. An unenviable task that extends way beyond the need to establish entirely new air combat procedures for pilots managing drone formations, and will also have to address basing requirements, logistics, mechanical support, and a lot more. In a real way, designing and building these drones might even be the easy part, as long as the funding faucet stays turned on anyway. Figuring out how to use these never-before-seen capabilities in combat, and then training pilots who may have reservations about relying on AI for their own survival, well, that could be a whole different set of challenges entirely, and you better believe I'll be here to walk you through it when the time comes. And with that, ends yet another edition of Air Power from Sandboxx News. I'm Alex Hollings. Make sure to swing by sandboxnews.com today and every day for all the latest in news, entertainment, and motivation from all around the Force. If you got anything out of today's video, make sure to click like and subscribe down below, and leave me a comment so I know what I should cover next. And of course, don't forget to tap on that bell icon so you never miss a drop from Sandboxx News.